Welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks to Helen Castle for inviting me, giving me the opportunity and that platform. And yeah, the RIBA is very nice to us. I mean, Zaha recently got the gold medal, which was incredibly important and a very, very difficult year for her. So thank you to the RIBA, and also that I've got the honor to currently chairing the Sterling Prize jury. And we had a wonderful few days with Jane going around, so I'm very happy to be so welcomed by the RIBA. I also have to apologize ahead. I have to run off after this. I usually would have loved to join and discuss and debate, but we're actually opening a building today. And I have to be at 3 o'clock in Antwerp. So, other than that, so, well, it's a pleasure. And forgive me also if my style of lecturing is relatively fast-tracked to get a lot of things across. I mean, I think you will be curious to understand how we're feeling, what we're doing after Zaha's passing, which is very sad, and we're still in kind of a state of grief and shock. And we have, on the 10th of October, there will be a memorial service at St. Paul's Cathedral, open to everybody. So at the same time, we pulled together. We're in good spirits and really came together as a firm and as a group. We've lost nobody, and everybody is in good spirits. And I want to show you some of this. So this is, and we were, clients have been actually very good and loyal to us, even if you had only started with a sketch or it just engaged. But also there was lots of questions, so we had to tell people that we're going to stay and that we have a strong group. The leadership and organization of the firm is staying in place. So we have now one principal left, and we have a CEO, Muja Majadi, who came from Foster to us, and then we have these three, Charles Walker, Jim Heron, and Gianluca Rakana, are on the board of directors. They each run one of our so-called profit centers or clusters, and then there's a whole group of associate directors, senior associates. That whole organization, which we forged over the last few years, is, I think, a very, very strong and reliable and wonderful group. And I can really, and we have been both, Zaha and myself, delegating a lot of the responsibility to this group. Now we're moving forward. We can't be over-cautious. I mean, we don't know if we really survive. Time will tell, but we have a lot of activity. So we're opening New York office. We just opened that. And we are just opening Mexico City and Dubai also in next month. So to keep the momentum going. Very, very structured leadership. Also want to emphasize the amount of women and the general diversity we have in our firm as a strength. And I think, yeah, this kind of diversity is incredibly important to reach back out into the world, and we couldn't have had this kind of firm in Europe. Also, the degree of entrepreneurial freedom we still have, I think, in the UK is fantastic. So these are the two locations where we're working from. This is Bowling Green Lane, and the old school building where we started. I started nearly 30 years ago when we were 4 people with Zaha in this room, which I'm still sitting in. And then we have another location because we've been growing so much. We've took over the whole building in Goswell Road with a wonderful gallery, and it's open to the public. And now during London Design Week, there's a lot of activities, and we use that also to host fun things like pop-up shops for young fashion designers, for instance, or Central St. Martin School of Design. We have pop-up hair salons there. We have debates and presentations, which are public, and music events, etc. So we have trying to be more than just a firm with that location, and that's quite wonderful. We are working across the whole globe. This is not all completed projects, but this is projects we're getting engaged with. And you know, as you can imagine, and you have the same experience, I guess, that only 5% of what you're actually getting involved with pulls through into final buildings. So we have finished 53 buildings over the last 30 years, and a lot of them recently, and we have another 24 on site. So it's been accelerating. These are the projects, 24 on site and up to 36 in the late stages. I'm stepping onto a private plane right after this, unfortunately, to be there in time to open this. I don't know how, and this is one of the recent projects. It's the Antwerp Port House, an extension in the harbor, which is where you can be bold and cracking. And but this is to show a few of those projects which are on site. Our first New York project, in Chelsea at the High Line, Miami, a tower in the at Biscayne Bay, and that's on site. Big hotel tower in Macau, under construction, a major tower. My new passion is mega atrium. I'll show you more of that later. In Beijing and in Changsha, a big cultural complex. So there's a lot of going on. We recently won this very, very large bridge in Taipei. So it's really sad that Zaha can see all of these works which are coming to fruition now. I mean, financially, we've been good. I mean, we pulled through the financial crisis quite well. We had the only dip was in post-Arab Spring. We're back on track, and we're a very, very global firm, obviously. And you can see where the different regions where we are in terms of turnover distributed. Very, very important Asia and Middle East, and recently also the Americas. And we started, of course, with artworks and artistic projects, art centers and cultural projects, but we're now really a global firm. And that's what we always wanted, what Zaha always wanted. The innovations we're trying to promote and set in motion are meant to be universally applicable across all scales of design practice. In terms of projects, I mean, there's also this element of brand recognition, which is interesting, which is puts one onto the spotlight and generates sometimes hostility, as well as, of course, an important signal to clients around the world. And I just wanted to show you, click through this project, which has been a major source of pride and brand recognition for us, but also received a lot of criticism. And our projects become iconic. They end up on the map of cities. For a reason that we're not superficially aiming to make something bizarre and strange, and this was a project where we've been hugely criticized ahead of construction even, and there were a lot of worries in the city, but we had the thick skin and we pulled through, and now everybody loves and adores this project. It's one of the most popular projects in the center of Seoul. So sometimes one also have to commit to what one knows is meaningful and viable, and something which makes sense. And this 8.5 million visitors in the first year, only the Louvre had more visitors as a cultural destination that year. And I'll just clip through, and you can see our projects. They're designed according to a set of principles and methodologies which make them look other, and they pop out of the fabric strongly, but also they make sense in terms of gathering contemporary companies in this case, and new ways of working and booking workplaces. But you can see the buildings, they look different, they attract, but that's not something we design. It comes out of a logic of sort of design principles we apply to these projects, and they're actually meant to be contextually embedded. However strange it might think, but I think they will also hopefully transform their surroundings, and later on will be part of a larger texture, of which I think should be super communicative, super porous, super open, and orienting in spaces where you have things unfolded in front of you all around, and there's a logic through which you can navigate such spaces. And many simultaneous offerings are brought into view. There's a cluster of many, many small firms and startup companies sharing this kind of complex, and our own offices are in there. And they can also expand, a recent extension to our own projects. So these are not hermetic and closed objects. They are evolving urban textures. That's the way we want to see them, and we deliver them with the highest level of technical expertise. And we do that in all around Asia. This is Singapore, this is Nanjing, projects on site in Qatar. Beijing Airport, we won the competition after 2.5 years of hard struggle against major firms in the world. So this is a new step and stage. We have been invited to a number of other major airport competitions like Mexico City and Chengdu and others. A sketch, we still have the creative nerve, and that's something we will have to prove, that there is an intelligence and creativity and artistic credibility within the firm, which isn't all located in Zaha's person. And it's a DNA and distributed, and also comes through my person. I've been co-authoring it. So we still got that talent. So to show you these little sketches we're doing recently, all the awards and the press coverage, and that's a challenge, of course. That business, 400 people with this turnover and global reach, has been helped and thriving also on Zaha's personality, but also the project has attract attention. And each of these projects, and every one of them, is generating a set of press coverage. If you would translate that into square inches of payable advertising, you would reach a multiple of the budget of these projects, and that's sometimes an interesting message. But at the same time, front covers of newspapers and editorial double spreads you can't purchase. So it's a conservative estimate. At least 2,000 in 2015, but over 1,000 features every year for the last few years, and this is the last 5 years. We've been Google top search firm in pulling away from all the other so-called star architects. And that is all about Zaha, of course, and Zaha's been an amazing figure and personality. Everybody wanted to know more about her, and is an incredibly charismatic leader and great innovator. So the challenge is how we continue after her passing. And I'm trying. I mean, I have to step up and try to be vocal, and I've always been that. I've been tagging along with Zaha, and I know this world, and this kind of firm needs a charismatic leader, and I'm trying to upgrade my flamboyance with my own kind of fashion efforts, and I'm trying. I mean, I'm not sure how serious, if that backfires or fires in the right direction, but I don't know. I have to experiment. We don't know what. I can't go down in like a gray mouse. But we've been doing fashion, and it's part of the design world. And I think fashion's a little bit behind the curve. Currently, there's a show in Greek Street where you can look how we integrate technology, fashion, lightness, new materials, the high performance of sportswear into making that a kind of interesting design discipline as well. And I think all the design disciplines, it's all about communication, and fashion is part of this. But I also wanted to show our interest in environmental parameters as drivers for architecture, something which is nearly finished now on site, the way we look at morphologies and urban textures being driven by environmental concerns in very, very hot climate. And it's a big kind of research campus also with conference center and library, etc. And so I'm just going quickly through this. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but there's a lot of those things which are coming out, or the Iraqi central bank, which is all about avoiding a kind of glass tower and making shading and well views and navigation through the tower a theme. Urban design we've been into for a long time, and we won these competitions because not because they're strange and stimulating textures, but because they are rational and make sense in terms of delivering diversity, embeddedness, and bringing in urban textures into a new synthesis at the outskirts of development in different cities and countries. And that's also been the research agenda for the Design Research Lab in terms of that high-density urban concentration, some of those master plans, and inspired by research for Frei Otto and others. And I just want to click through quickly. So this is, the way our blocks diversify and differentiate, so diversity and difference as a default condition, so you have lots of variety of product, the way it ties in at the same time in urban texture and draws these textures together and creates destinations and high points and orientations. So that makes sense, and I think in terms of an overall urban identity also, we think that this allows us, after 30 years nearly of garbage spill urbanization, identityless sprawl and spill, to bring back identity into the urban conditions. So, I mean, for us, communication is a major driver. I think we want to look at high-density urban settings where we can network and meet and collaborate and be inter-aware what's going on. This is what these projects are all about. We're living in what I call a post-Furthest network society, so atria and opening up the building rather than disappearing in cores, elevators, corridors, and cells you need to know what's going on around you, and these vistas, both within and around and outside the building, are very important for. And that's why I'm fostering this idea of hollowing out building and making them internally and externally transparent to everybody who's coming together there to connect. And that's what these kind of visions are for, this kind of idea of a mega atrium, of an interior urbanism where there is intervisibility in sometimes very large corporations. This is for Hyundai, these are thousands of people, or looked at Google campus and such projects as a key interest of area. And this is another headquarter with a conglomerate with multiple firms which also have synergies. So again, that idea of a mega atrium is being pursued, and of course there are technical challenges like fire, but I think it's a fantastic and wonderful view and totally viable and feasible if we solve, let's say, fire issues. And so this is the kind of research agenda I've been pushing, something new you haven't seen yet, but the first one is on site, and maybe a second one is coming. We also do products and furniture. We believe that it's a total world of innovation, and we have various branches in our product development. We have limited editions for experimental work. We have collaborations with major Italian furniture firms, and we have our own smaller product ranges which we're selling. And a new selection I've been developing in timber, and this will be presented and launched in October in London, as well as using 3D printing and more sophisticated technologies to start off using that maybe in the furniture and product world is an easy step in. But we also realize that we have to have an interior design department, because more and more architects are pushed to look at as designing only the envelope, the wrapper. And so we had to step up and deliver that specialism, because it is a sophisticated science in its own right, if you like, but we don't want to give up on the totality of an experience which we need to synthesize for clients. So this is some of our interior design, and with all of the residential and hotel projects, we so far have been successful muscling ourselves into the interiors, and we also do interiors as a Renaissance upgrade palace in Rome. So we're going to do that hotel, and we're expanding our repertoire. Now, in terms of research, I want to show we have an internal research group. We have all these academic relationships, and 50 people are teaching and tutoring around the schools of London and elsewhere. But we have an internal group of 8 people, so we're doing computational research into structural optimization with engineers, fabrication optimization a lot. And for instance, we use experimental structures in bioanalysis and elsewhere, as well as our things at the V&A to test these out. And out of these, we scale up into small buildings and larger buildings. Another test pavilion, it's a shell structure which has a shell form optimization, and then it has a reticulation as a topology optimized structural evolutionary process. Then we have a series of fabrication algorithms optimizing those, and in the end you can build something very quickly, so effectively, and looks elegant and beautiful. And we're scaling up now into larger projects where we use these kind of complex geometries, the efficiency of shell construction. This is super thin, high performance concrete shells, but at the same time you get the kind of richness of ornateness. And I want to also show this, that we have spectacular new work in our drawing boards, and we're also addressing cultural, let's say, affiliation, sensitivities, references, embedding ourselves, for instance, in Middle Eastern culture with these works and projects, as well as a whole history where we've done a number of competitions like this. We're also using timber innovatively. It's a multi-story timber construction and timber cladding in Cambodia, and the shell research also entered into Beijing Airport, various varieties, and also here at Chengdu Airport we have lightweight shell surface structures, but also again there's an element of what I call parametric regionalism. There's the element of tying in with cultural references, and I think we can do that. We demonstrate that we can do that, and I think it's important. And this is again out of research pavilion into a permanent structure, into a major building which is coming out of this research. So it's the combination of shell and tensile structures, and it's tragic what happened to this, but it would have been an absolutely fabulous and fantastic project for us to lose, by the way. And so we also the new department, which I'm very keen on, I've been researching this for many years, is corporate space planning. And there we're building an innovative team with collaborators, with Bureau Hubble Space team, with our own in-house group. And we want to make this the key case for pushing a new research agenda, which I want to briefly mention at the end. New levels of complexity, new levels of augmented navigation. There's a major project we won, the Sberbank in Moscow. And in my latest AD, which I edited for Helen, I'm having an article describing this. Basically, I'm just clicking through this, I only have 5 minutes left. This is really that architecture is really about ordering social processes, and they become ever more complex and rich, but there's always been about making a communicative, structured environment to gather and associate us and orient us in our interaction processes on the urban scale to build up society through an evolving and accruing built environment. That's what architecture is all about. It's not shelter, it's actually structuring communication, structuring processes, status groups, routines, institutions, and we are navigating the world by, and this is symbolic here, by thresholds, lines and structures which guide us and structure our interactions and cooperation. So it's not shelter but order which we should be looking at, and it's been always like this, and I want to upgrade that and make that an explicit agenda. It's a bit like a chessboard, a society which needs a form and a space, and so a morphology and spatial structure. And that's what I want to tease out, and I want to bring the final purpose and meaning of architecture into the model so that we know that we're doing. We can't imagine it anymore in a large complex project like Google Campus. And what is happening already with circulatory processes, I now wanted to do with all interaction processes at conferences, at corporate headquarters, in particular these kind of things where you have not parallel lives, but where you have integrated synergetic lives. We need to really know how things get together, how we cluster, how we move, what it matters, how many meeting rooms, how many tables, and what sizes, what ranges, what entrances and exits, structure a crowd. And these crowds which we're developing are not homogeneous circulatory crowds that are called engineering, but they're kind of differentiated with network information embedded to simulate interaction scenarios and really starting to get a handle on the final purpose and success criteria of the built environment. And that is a research agenda which I've been developing at the AA Design Research Lab. Now we have our own space building team, and now I got a research grant and building a PhD group to push that forward with partners like Bureau Hubble, with partners like Space Syntax Group and potentially some other architects to forge something which I think will be seminal in upgrading our capacity of parametrism with respect to social functionality primarily. And we demonstrated the capacity of computational enhancement and empowerment with respect to a lot of technological sophistication, environmental, structural. But I think this is the next step, which I find incredibly interesting, and happy to promote. These are just the different studies we've done with this, and warming up and to this kind of conception of architecture, and that will drive on various scales the interaction and the meaning of these spaces and meanings of reconfiguration. You can also study what reconfiguration means, and I'm just clicking briefly through it. Even different types of walking matter, and as you zoom up into detail, you can get a handle of what also unusual and innovative and strange looking environments actually might mean and do and structure. That will also allow making innovations more credible. For instance, that strange building which we offered to Seoul, we could have animated and brought to life for audiences rather than being shocked by strangeness, to see the efficiency and elegance and beauty of the way it structures interaction processes. So I leave you with that. On that note, and we open the Q&A.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Patrik. Clearly we need more time. It's an incredible gallop through a whole myriad of amazing projects and ideas, and clearly next time we ask you, we'll give you a bit more time. But we did want to have time for some questions from the audience, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of people wanting to ask Patrik some questions while he's here. wonderful that you've come all the way to Nottingham in advance of going to Antwerp, so thank you again for that. But could I take the first question from the audience, please?
Yes, please.
Gentleman there with your glasses.
Well, we have to usually follow all the different routes which come with the project, and we have full delivery capacity all the way through construction documents and site supervision and construction management. We have that capacity in England. We have that in Germany. We used to have in Germany and Italy as well. And when we go abroad, we have, of course, partners, local design institutes and partners. But we're very open to all procurement rules. We have a very, very mature and professional group, and we're also happy to be seconded through design and build scenarios. So we're very open. What we insist on is always to stay involved through all stages and hand over the key and building to the client at the end. That's the only condition, but it could be in all sorts of scenarios. It's interesting. I mean, we're actually working hard to see if we can make more of our efforts and projects profitable. But the big major projects are the main fee-earning ventures. So we might have, let's say, 100 projects at any time, and it's maybe only 10 projects that really break profit. A lot of them we're trying to break even. A lot of them are small. All smaller projects lose money. But this is, you know, we want to stay busy. You want to be motivated. That's where you find out new things you can point to, and then bring them to the mid-size or larger project, a new approach, a way of working, a material, a subcontractor. So what we care about is the overall profitability. Of course, if a major client comes in with a big project, we do focus and put the resources in. The Sparebank project, we just cleared the whole floor, and we put a huge co-located team together, and that's, of course, we have to focus on that. We're happy to take all sorts of smaller projects to keep us stimulated, and we're trying to plan project at least so that they all at least break even. It's not always working out. Well, we're trying with every project to have an element of innovation and freshness. So that's something we also, you know, it's too easy to fall into routine, particularly if you have not much time and there's pressure. But we always say, like, hang on, what could be that moment of redemption or interest, that new element here? So this is very, very generally. But what all projects share is the interest of being adaptive and contextually sensitive. We're looking for showing that an enriched language which works with multiple angles, curvature, and let's say more an open repertoire of composition is actually more agile and adaptive and versatile in addressing multiple problems. So since we have when we work on these projects, we continuously test the versatility and problem-solving capacity of our repertoires. For me, a formal repertoire is a problem-solving repertoire, and an enriched repertoire is an enriched search space for finding solutions. And I think that's important set of principles. We discovered this, not something we kind of had an a priori investment in. For instance, that oftentimes when things get complex, with curvature, you can maintain continuity between different elements. You can maintain legibility, the continuity and legibility of a path. But we're not wedded to this. And you know, we recently done a lot of city blocks. If you work into a fabric, then the exterior form becomes more constrained, and then we're trying to have an interior freedom and let's say thrill and complexity. But there's always more and more now. We're moving into a stage where what used to be manifesto experiments, we're now called into projects where we actually have to deliver best practice, and it isn't pointing only beyond itself, which it always should, but delivering the best for the institution at the moment. And I think that I feel we can. I mean, I think some of these projects I've been showing are large-scale, very vital and viable propositions. Well, I mean, first of all, I think we have to, it's a very long term. For instance, usually it was 5, 6, 7 years when we started to get interested in shell structures and tensile structure. We started that at school. And then we learned about it, and we made small models, experiments, and we scaled up into small pavilions and structures, and then into small buildings. So it takes a long time. Similar with skeletons, we got interested in expressing structure much more strongly in our buildings. We developed all the skeleton research at the AA, and then in various competitions, and now we have a series of strong, structurally driven towers on site, and that was maybe 7, 8 years. So it is an investment to the future. I mean, we can't expect that to be fast, but you simply cannot. If you're confronted with a competition and you're given 4 weeks, at that point start thinking about an innovation. It's just simply out of the question. And so that's why we know, and we've been using the various schools we have been teaching, and I've been a passionate teacher, and so has been Zaha for all my life. Since I stepped out of school, I stepped into teaching. And I allow this for lots of our people. So that's the initial, the first step, because there you get the resource of the students. That gets you to a certain point. Then we realize we have to hire some of the best and brightest and allow them to continue this research. And I think foster have that. There's not many firms, and I think it's important that we now have firms who can do that and then collaborate back with academics who invest their careers in there, but the guidance through practice and with our view of what could thrive and work in practice is very important to channel and guide and make that research viable, so it comes to fruition within a decade. Similar was the urbanism research, where we actually were confronted in the office with suddenly these large scales in the developing world, and that time we used the AA to have what I call parametric urbanism research, paralleling what we tried in the office, and that is incredibly important. But I think it's also important to have that next step. So now, with respect to this research, I realized the number of what I can achieve with students groups is only illustrative, and now I was looking for funding, and I'm building a PhD group, a large PhD group, also with collaborators like Hadid, who they have their own PhDs which they're running, and I'm getting experts, mathematicians, computer scientists on it, and I have collaborations also with Rutgers University, and so that's the next stage. And it's very important that we're at the same time building the professional space planning group as a first recipient of early research capacities. So that, for me, is a model which is stronger than a pure academic model, but we still need academics, because we couldn't afford, of course, to have 50 researchers. So we have 10 researchers, but that's quite a substantial investment for us.
We just have one more question.
Okay.
Caroline here.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say, actually, I think you stepped up to the mountain really well. So
Oh, thank you. Not with respect of proper post-occupancy. I mean, it's on our mind, and that's what it should exist, that's what should happen. I mean, it's always resource constraints. All we have is anecdotal and intuitive, going back to our buildings, whether it's the school in Brixton or whether it's a BMW building we've been going back, or Maxi, we're now showing our own work in the museum. So we keep in touch with our clients as much as we can. The same is with repeat clients like ZHA China, where we of course go back to these projects. We live and work in one of the projects, and we have others on the run. So it's more like this anecdotal feedback what we've got, and I agree that in the end what this demands is an empirical, evidence-based layer to verify the model, and also go back to compare predictions. I mean, what we do in our business modeling, we have always the forecast, and we're always running in the actual versus forecast comparison to see whether to understand the methodology robustness, and that should happen. We all know it, but there's always something else. So far been more urgent, and resources are thin. But thanks for the question. I mean, that's. It was in stops and starts because we had a number of bad luck situations where, when we had some substantial large projects in the early 90s, which was the Düsseldorf complex, which the company itself, who wanted the tenant folded, strangely. And we had Cardiff. I mean, there were moments where we geared up to a larger delivery, and then we had to we lost those projects. And it was only in the late 90s that we finally came through with things like Maxi, Wolfsburg, Cincinnati. But the interim years, I think, in retrospect, was important to build up that repertoire to address these more spectacular, larger projects, and that we still live off that in the 2000s. The real change then came in the 2003-04. That was that mushrooming, let's say, from 35 into 450. Through that incredible boom years, which in retrospect were delusional, but helped us to, and it was also my spirit. That was my kind of recklessness of seizing the moment and just taking on people without having jobs, knowing that the jobs would fly through the door, and we had literally came and hired nearly every year the whole AADOL posse. Put them into another room. So that was just, I think, in retrospect, great, and we could actually hold on to this. Now we've been kind of stable since 2008. We've been more or less at that level. My ambition is though to see the next stage. I mean, I admire Foster and Partners and see what a larger scale can allow for, and still being on innovative and on the cutting edge. So that's the next stage. I don't know how to get there, but that's why I think something like this and building partnerships is for me a route. Well, it's early stages. I mean, this will be initially just to give us the edge to win some of those jobs, which we have. We have 3 headquarter buildings going, and so that's perhaps good enough. But my next ambition is to make this more available to others and to scale it up, and not only be a kind of Hadid capacity. So I'm thinking of making that a potential spin-off, and with its own fee base. A little bit like now you have crowd modeling from the engineers coming in as an additional element. This one is much more integrated to generalizable to all complex buildings, but I think it's something which could be in an initial stage, similar to Space Syntax, a standalone venture which plugs in, and we would use it and others would start to use it. But ultimately I see it as something which the whole profession and discipline should learn about and take up as a capacity. But I know it's not necessarily happening. I'm, for instance, stunned that the Space Syntax research and theory and intelligence isn't more widely distributed in the field. It remains a specialist knowledge. This kind of thing is something which should be taught at school if there was a particular architectural intelligence, which is all about spatial ordering, and that should be learned. And my hope is that something like this would become a best practice methodology, which you could have in the offices and fold it into design process, and then with an expert advice maybe on top. So this, I don't know. I mean, it could become a specialist service, at least in the interim, along the lines of a Space Syntax.
Thank you again, Patrik. Thank you for being kind enough to come all the way up to Nottingham on your way to Antwerp. And we hope that the weather is as nice in Antwerp as it is here in Nottingham.
Thanks a lot, guys.